It's my absolute pleasure, and I've been wanting to speak to this talented lady for a long time now, Alison Locke. Thank you for joining me, and hello from down under.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Yes, I am in beautiful sunny Los Angeles at the moment. So I'm
That's
very thanks
nice.
for having
That's
me.
nice. We won't discuss the time differences, but I don't mind getting up early. This will be worth it, I'm sure.
I know. I was saying before we were recording that I was like, oh man, I should have done the math correctly on that before we started time. Sorry about that.
No, no drama. Okay, so before I start, I've heard that the Babadook is one of your favorite movies, which is an Australian film. Is
Yes,
that
it
right?
is. Yes, it is. It is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love the Babadook so much. It was one of those movies that you watch it and it makes you realize what movies can do. Like that level of love, like really inspired me in terms of what I could write about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just love it. I think it's just such a unique movie. Jennifer Kent.
Y- Yes, Jennifer Kent. Well, The Apology is a film that is pretty much up there. It's well regarded. That's why we're talking today. It's on Shudder. When I first saw it, Alison, I had to watch it again because I
Oh,
was like, now I knew what was going to happen. I wanted to
yeah.
rewatch it and look for clues and things. So well done.
Thank
Yeah, it
you.
must be great for a great feeling that you're getting so much praise for this debut film.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the whole thing is just a dreamboat situation for a debut film feature. Like that doesn't, you know, you don't get this kind of support, this kind of cast, this kind of reception,
Yeah.
most debut features. So it's been quite the gift. Yeah.
How did Shudder come on board, or did they finance it for you? That's quite great exposure to have someone such as Shudder stream it for you.
Absolutely. I found out that we were going to be on Shudder and I burst into tears of gratitude. I was so excited. So I'm such a fan. Basically what happened is that when Company X, which was the company that we were working with, originally we were with Company X and SpectraVision, and they decided to be two separate companies. And so my project stayed with Company X, but they have a good history of working with RLJE Films,
Yeah,
which is connected to Shudder and AMC Plus. And
yeah.
so that was basically part of the distribution model, was that we were going to be on those two platforms. We're also available to rent or buy on VOD and whatever platform you use. So there's a bunch of different ways. We had a week-long theatrical run, which was very exciting because we actually got to play in theaters, and my mother got to go to the movies and see my movie. And the manager was really sweet and found when he found out, he like took the poster out of the frame and gave it to her.
Oh,
Just stuff like that was just like, all right, cool. That's pretty
yeah.
neat.
Well, yeah. No, I can imagine the theater experience, like all movies, was incredible,
Yeah.
and the fact that it's playing in Australia and England and all over the world too, like people are watching it now, is terrific.
Yeah.
That it's so worldwide. And I mean, was it always going to be called The Apology? Did you have other titles in mind?
It was actually always The Apology. And funny
Yeah.
enough, my one of the original producers on it, who's with SpectraVision, Daniel Noah, who is an incredibly wise and accomplished man, he kept being like, I don't know if that's the title. And he would try to come, we keep try I'd be like, I'm trying, man. I'm trying to come up with alternates for you. We just never landed on it. It was just always The Apology. And it was such a great North Star to remember that ultimately, while this is a revenge story, it's really about that process of apologizing, keeping
Yeah.
it grounded in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. We'll keep it fairly spoiler free for the start of the
Yeah.
conversation, because I am going to ask you some spoilers too. But
Yeah. Tell me.
a dream, like you must have a lot of really cool dreams. If this began as a dream,
I
do you
do.
write them all down? Have you got like a whole,
I have,
booklet?
yeah, I do have some more. I actually just had one about a week ago. I was like, oh man, this is and the funny enough, they're either extremely vivid, awful, grueling nightmares, or they're these little contained snippet things that just ignite the imagination. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's always sort of like, ah, yeah, I've got them, and I know that when I get the time, I can go revisit. But that was one that I was like, I just found myself so compelled by that I just went right to work on it.
You're I'll get to your cast in a minute, but it's a small cast. How do you maintain the suspense on set? did you notice any of the actors sort of lacking in you? What did you do to motivate them, or were they always motivated?
Oh, they were always motivated. I mean, they're extreme pros and like
Yes.
just artists in their own right. They all have just great big brains, and it really we had so many fantastic in-depth conversations before we even got to set, and
Mm,
then we also had a chance to do a few read-throughs over Zoom, and then we also did a day and a half. Anna and Linus and I on the actual set. Uh,
sure.
to do some rehearsals. So by the time we got to actually shooting it, it was a little more like, and my DP, Jack Caswell, and I had done extensive shot listing. My first AD, Cedric Shabazz, like we all kind of did a lot of prep work to try to know what our plan was, because we only had 16 days to shoot it. And which is so scary. Every time I say that figure, I'm filled with another bout of anxiety. But it was like all about that prep so that we could try to get it to be
Yeah.
as ready for us to just sort of make it happen in the moment, as opposed to finding it in the moment, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense. A 16-day shooting schedule. Like, did you get to like day 14 and go, oh no, we're not going to make it?
Oh yeah, no, day 3.
Day 3.
I just remember I had this thought that was so crazy, where I literally felt so much pressure, getting
Yeah.
that level of pressure is really quite the trick. And now that I've had the gift of getting to know some other directors who've made features, it's such a universal feeling, but nobody ever wants to talk about it. So I'm here to say, if this happens to you, it's very normal. It was day 3, I was like, I just thought, I'm just gonna go. Like that thought went into my head, like,
Oh no, you were going to leave.
leave. And immediately I was like, I would never do that. I'm such a Girl Scout. Like I would never like not do something I say I'm gonna do. Like that's
Yeah.
just like I can't even. But that was what was so fascinating about that thought was that it was like,
Mm,
oh, this pressure is so great that it even prompted it in me. But it helped me because I remember another director talking about that in an interview. Edgar Wright talked about doing that, having that feeling on Spaced, except he literally took like a long walk. Like his producer had to go find him. I was like, yeah.
yeah. Well, some directors choose to leave, others get asked to leave. I wouldn't like
Yes.
the latter.
Yes, exactly. I don't want any of it. I want to stay and have fun. And we had so much fun too. It was not, there's always hardships making films, especially making your first feature, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was such a gift to be able to do that with this incredible crew and I mean, it's crazy.
Did you keep a diary? Did you take notes on set, for future reference or to maybe write a book? How
Yeah.
did you do? Yeah, you took some notes. That's good.
I took some notes, not as much as I wish I had, but I did take, I use a program called Scriptation that I just started using on this film. And it's basically like you can save all of your drafts of a script on top of each other, and you can do different sort of layers,
Oh
and you
yeah.
write your notes for it, and it's a PDF thing that you do on the iPad. So a lot of times I would just keep those layers, and it would be all kinds of random thoughts. Make sure you tell them this, make sure
That's a
this,
great idea.
and then I also have a daily journal that I write in when I'm being good. I wasn't always like that. I was writing as much as I could. Because yeah, it's like you're conscious of the fact that like whenever you make something, if you're lucky, maybe you're a tiny part of film history. And even if not, like it's part of how you process your
Yeah.
own thing, experience of making it,
Yeah. Well, you mentioned film history. A lot of directors who go on to bigger things, a lot of people revisit their first film. So in your career, in another 10 years or so, people who haven't seen The Apology but know
Yeah.
Alison Locke because you're going to have
Right.
some big blockbuster will go back
Right.
to The Apology, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I welcome any and all view times. Please see it at any point now or in the future.
Another thing about Shudder too is not all their titles, but a lot of their titles they'll put on DVD or Blu-ray. So
Yes.
you can add extra features. Do you know if your movie will be on Blu-ray or DVD, a physical media at any point?
Yes, I believe it is going to be on physical media. I can't completely confirm because I don't have a release date or anything, but that was what
Sure.
was always discussed. But we have when you buy it on VOD at this time, you can get a little making of
Oh,
featurette
good,
thing. So there is
good.
that. I don't know if we're going to do any others. I kept offering. I was like, I'll do it for free. Like whatever you want to do.
We can start going into spoiler territory now. Is there an alternative ending? Is it filmed the way you wrote it?
Yeah, it's filmed the way I wrote it. I kept rewriting as we were even filming. I
That's
kept
normal. Yeah,
finding,
that's
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was just wild because it was like, oh right, writer and director. It's not one job. It is kind of two jobs that you're doing at once. Um, yeah, it was always the way that it ended is the way that it has always ended. There were slight different orders in terms of when do we see Jack last? When do we see
Yeah.
Sally? How long do we see Sally? Those sort of editorial choices that it
Yeah.
took us a while to find in the edit, but it was always ending on those two ladies. It was always ending on some hint that the police were coming, but they're not important.
Yeah.
Like the idea that really it's about this woman remembering that she has so much love in her life now and in the past, and
Mm.
but without disregarding the horrific experience that she had that evening.
Yeah, yeah, without disregarding all the tension and everything that was built up previously. And
Yeah,
just that's all you needed, the ladies and the looks on their faces, obviously.
yeah. Especially when you
Yeah.
have actors that are that compelling and
Mm,
so much, and also have so much history in terms of what they have made themselves. I feel like that's something folks don't talk about enough, is like when you're watching something, you feel the weight of all the things that you've watched them do 50
sure.
years.
I'm assuming that's why you cast them, or did you know them previously? You seemed very, you could see that there was a good connection between director and their scene partners, all of them. It was like a play almost at times. How did you cast?
um yeah, it was a varied experience because it was funny because I was a fan of Anna and Linus to be beforehand, but I just
Yeah,
didn't
same.
connect it. And so they were actually both suggestions from my producers. My producers worked with Linus on Mandy.
Yeah.
He played that incredible cult leader, and Anna, of course, everyone is obsessed with her in Breaking Bad and Deadwood. She could not give a more balls. I mean, such a balls out, like just
I didn't want to
vulnerable.
say that, but yeah,
Yeah,
accurate.
yeah, yeah. Just she just everything was so yeah, just raw. Raw sounds like she didn't form it, but you know what I mean. It's a very, they're both such emotional performances. So of course it's like as soon as they suggested them, I was like, oh my God, I love them both so much.
Yeah.
And I felt so silly that I hadn't thought of Linus because I was such a fan. I've always been a fan of his. Like I loved Wings of the Dove when it came out, and I thought
Yeah.
he gave such an interesting layered psychological performance in that film. But my brain just went, he's English, and just didn't think about it,
Right.
which is so embarrassing because it's like he's lives in America now. He does a lot of American accents.
Yeah.
It's funny. Sometimes that first exposure makes you go, nope, this is what I'm thinking. Why? This gentleman could not be more of a character actor doing every kind of
Oh,
role.
I know. Well, he pops up in a lot of different things, Linus. And I remember seeing him before The Wings of the Dove in a movie called Priest.
Priest as
Uh,
well.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Priest
I
is
saw
Priest.
Priest second, even though it came out before Wings of the Dove, but I did
Yeah,
love.
I saw it as a kid. I probably shouldn't have seen it in some art house cinema in Sydney. And forever, Linus Roache is, is one of many actors because I was movie obsessed as a child as well. But yeah, great casting there. Anna Gunn, I'm sure, they never fluffed their lines. They never, went off script. So were they as professional as you say they are? Like, was there any joking on set behind the scenes?
There wasn't a lot of joking, but there was a lot of like I think that was too hard to be too silly. Like I was like ready to be like, we can lighten the mood,
Yeah.
like what do you need? I think Anna needed it to stay in a certain kind of place to stay there, but there was a lot of collaboration, a lot of constant conversation about how to do things and stuff. But yeah. And then also Janeane, I was totally my idea, and she absolutely
Thank
called
you.
me immediately and just was like, she didn't even like make it clear she was saying yes. She just started talking about dates. Like if the dates don't conflict, like I understand.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look, I wanted to thank you for casting Janeane, actually. Talking of movies when I was younger, Reality Bites, just one of many. And to see her in something like this, it's great to hear that she just went for it. And she
Oh yeah.
is top, she's really top notch on screen too.
Thank you. Yeah, she has such incredible dramatic chops, and because she's so smart, and she's so like understands, because she's played every kind of she's working constantly, has worked
Yeah.
constantly. She's played everything from like the big romantic lead to like popping in to say one line. So she absolutely understood her role as sort of bearing witness in the
Yeah.
film and representing, like I say, this like platonic love of your life, ride or die friend. She
Yeah.
totally,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love her. I think her work's always been good since I first saw her. The house, was the house a set, and was the snow real?
The house was not a set. It was a real house in
Mm,
Los Angeles.
mm,
And we filmed everything that's interior. We filmed in that house.
yeah,
And everything on the porch we filmed at that house. And then everything else is Wisconsin. And we also, very little of that snow is real. The only snow that is real is the aerials and some of those sort of B-roll shots.
yes,
That's
yeah,
real
yeah.
snow, but even then we had to augment it. Weather was never in our favor. It just wasn't in our favor. We don't expect snow in Los Angeles. We're not delusional, but it was like for the exteriors, it rained instead of snowing. It hadn't snowed in a while. Literally, the art department in Wisconsin went and like filled up the back of a truck with snow they found in like a random side of the road,
Hey,
and then
that
shoveled
happens.
it, just to try to like reduce the amount we knew we were going to have to spend in VFX. And we had a great VFX team, and the sound department did so much heavy lifting creating that storm. They just did an incredible job.
Yeah, the storm was fascinating because it became part of the tension building, and so to know that wasn't completely real, well done there. You had a really good team. Obviously, did you hand pick everyone, including your like DP, and did you hand pick them? Because you've done well. You've got a good
Oh,
team
thank
there.
you. I handpicked them, but I had a lot of help, especially
Sure.
from Kim Sherman, who was my main creative producer.
Yeah.
She has a lot more experience. She's produced a lot of great indie films like You're Next and Sun Don't Shine and No Man of God. She has a crazy history of like just
Good
making
titles.
really good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she knows a lot more crew than I did.
Yeah.
So it would be like, here's here's the ones whose films I just admire. Okay, now here's the ones that I've worked with that I love. Okay, now let's figure out who's available. Okay, let's go from there. So it was an extensive process, but I could not be more pleased. I feel like I found a lot of my like creative soulmates on this movie, which is really what you hope for with your first feature.
Oh, of course. Are you moving on to another feature soon, or are you taking your time before you direct something else? Are you allowed to announce anything?
I can't announce anything yet, but I have a couple of things that I'm ready. That I'm ready, and another one that I'm almost ready to try to find its home. So that's exciting. One of them that I've been working on today is a haunted house film.
Ah,
So we'll see how that works out, because I think it'd be fun to make I kept joking this was a metaphorical haunted house film, and I kind of would like to make it a real one.
is the next one based on a dream or another
No,
original?
but it's based on my life. It's
Oh,
definitely, it starts from a very autobiographical place, and then of course there's no ghosts and
yeah.
demons in my actual life, so
Yes.
that I know of.
I hope not, Ali. Director's chairs. Do you have any with your name on it?
I do now, because
Ah,
my friends John Schwartz and Christina Scanlon, they got me one for Christmas, which
oh,
was really
good.
sweet. So it's this nice director's chair with my name on it, and it says and then it was so cute. On the other side, they put writer director of the Apology.
Oh, that's
I'm like, okay,
nice.
so whenever I take this to set in the future, people will be like, okay, we know what your first thing was. It's very sweet. On set, we rented some, and then also Kim Sherman, again, who just like had my back 50 times a day,
Yeah.
brought hers so that I could sit in it, because it was nicer than the rental ones, because hers had like pockets on the side and little
Oh, nice.
all this stuff that just all those little things that make it easier when you're a sprawler like me. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
I have like way too much stuff with me at all times.
Are you a director that walks around the set, pointing fingers and saying, no, we need that there, or get the storyboards out? Or are you more laid back because you know what everyone has to do?
I'd say something in the middle. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I definitely try to, again, have those conversations as much as possible beforehand.
Yeah.
And then I'm basically going through and sort of checking with people, like, how are you doing? Do you have any questions? Like, catching things here and there, like, oh, actually that isn't kind of what I wanted for this shot, or that wasn't quite what I meant, or what, I want a different color mug or whatever it is, like those kinds of things that pop up, checking in with the actors, make sure they're okay if they have questions,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
Did
But
you do?
trying to not just like,
Oh
trying to
no,
trust my collaborators.
I could imagine just talking to you now. I think you'd be awesome to work with. So I'm sure you're going to have a very big future ahead, because you gain contacts and chemistry with people. So
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I have so many of these wonderful collaborators I can't wait to work with again. And now I'm just trying to, keep making things. I can't wait to make another feature. I'm excited.
Do you why horror though? Why did you choose horror as your first film? Is it something that you've always been interested in? Because it's a genre that is very popular, but it rarely gets recognized when it comes to awards and so forth.
Yeah, I think I didn't start out being obsessed with horror, but about
Yeah.
15 years ago or so, maybe a little longer, I saw a documentary called The American Nightmare.
Yeah.
And it really, like, it just unlocked my brain, kind of how I described watching the Babadook, or it just unlocks your brain a little bit in terms of what's creatively possible. And I just realized that I'd always enjoyed horror movies, and yet I had just had this weird thing that it was for somebody else.
Oh,
And it was so strange. It was like, why? And it really just kind of got me excited about making horror films, because it feels like, as much as I love everything, I mean, I love chopping mall, I love silly stuff too, but it's like I feel like it's such a safe place to go to explore all the hard things about life.
yeah.
And it lets you be messy about it, lets you be funny. And then, something awful happens right before or after that. It just has a lot more possibility. I just have so much genuine love, and I'd love to just stay in that space as much as possible. But I think about it as like, I like to blend genres. So it's not, I love horror. I would never be sad to be called a horror filmmaker. Like,
No.
that's what I think of myself as. But I also like the idea of continuing to keep pushing the envelope on what horror is, which I feel like my generation of filmmakers is really killing it with that. Where it's like,
Yes.
let's bring in action things. Let's make this more, maybe this is more of a psychological thriller. Maybe this is more of a survival tale that, feels horrifying because the violence is awful, those kinds of things. I just love all of it. Big nerd.
Well, maybe Linus Roache's character had a brother, and you can turn the sequel into an action film.
Oh, I don't think so, but I really would love to work with him again. He's fantastic. I already have
A
another
twin
thing
brother.
for him. Yeah, exactly. Oh, weird. Yeah, it's like just the same last name and otherwise not explained.
Are you up for the challenge of comedy? Because comedy can be one of the hardest genres to direct and get right. Are you up for that challenge, maybe?
I don't know that I'd ever want to do a straight comedy, because I know enough comedians to have super respect for how hard that is.
Sure.
But I am fascinated with this sort of what I like to call the Martin McDonagh school of comedy, which is he's the gentleman who made Banshees of Inisherin and In Bruges, where it's like, the people that I'm close with, at least, they're funny. Like, they're just funny even when things are awful. And I feel like that's never represented enough on screen, like that experience of like what it's like to that sort of funeral humor, or like, cathartic humor.
That's
that just
right.
what people do. You don't tend to just kind of stay so serious all the time, even when it's awful.
If there was a triple feature of movies you could pick for Alison Locke to present to an audience in a cinema, what three movies would you like to choose? Any three? Maybe your three favorite, or just three that you think are underseen movies?
Yeah. I think that's always the instinct, right? As you go, let's see which ones have people not seen as much that you adore.
Yes.
Definitely it would be Running on Empty, which is one of my favorite movies, and something I feel like people know about it, but I feel like they don't worship it as much as I'd like them to.
River Phoenix.
Amazing. Talk about a great cast, like a very grounded film. My family and I moved around a lot, so I felt very seen.
Okay.
We weren't running from the government, but
that's good. Judd Hirsch is in that, and he's actually nominated for an Oscar this year,
which I was so happy to see, because I've just had such a creative crush on him forever. I just think he's so and he really does kill it in Fableman's. I love the Fablemans so much because it feels like not to divert too much, but
That's
it
okay.
feels it feels so authentic to what it's like to live as a creative person,
Sure.
which is messy. You are involving your relationships in your work, and it does make things more complicated. Whatever you're examining in your work kind of spills out. Inevitably, it's difficult to find balance. All of those things I really resonated with me, and I thought it was also just such a loving portrayal of a divorce, like really like a respectful and
Respectful but dramatic and tough as well at
yeah.
times, obviously.
I love a film where no one is a clear villain like that,
Okay.
where it's like everybody is screwing up and well-meaning. I love that kind of thing. So I love Running on Empty because it's like that too. It has that kind of feeling, and Judd Hirsch has just been, killing it forever. Like Ordinary People is another one of my favorites.
Of course. Yeah, of
I
course.
wouldn't necessarily program that with Running on Empty because you would not be able to survive it. You would, would be like, let's just cry for 7 hours. I'm not gonna do that to people. Let's see, what's another one? I mean, I would always program the Babadook. There, people talk about it, but I feel like it's never, something that is that incredible. I still think would be, and it would be so fun to do like Q&As with those filmmakers to talk about, the connections. I find it fascinating to see where your influences actually really, how they've been.
Definitely, yeah, and it's
flowing both ways.
It's an Australian film that when it was released just shot straight to being on people's favorite lists, and then it went all around the world. So I'm not surprised you like that film so much, and the creative people behind it. So good choice. You're representing Down Under. Thank you.
And then I think you got to like throw in something a lot lighter. So I would go with Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I'm obsessed with that movie too. Yeah, but also I feel like all three of those movies have a lot to do with sort of finding your identity and finding your peace.
Yeah.
Even though it's like Fast Times is sort of has so much silly comedy to it, but it's really at the end of it, it's like all of those kids. That's what's great about coming of age movies. I loved coming of age movies at any age.
Yeah.
Like I love that kind of feeling of just because I feel like so often folks just resign themselves to whatever the choices that they've made, and it's like we evolve as people, and we should always believe in that possibility.
Well, just a couple more before we wrap it up. I don't want to keep you too much longer because I appreciate your time, but just off the cuff, going with fast times for a minute, what's your feeling of movies from like the 80s and 90s that are now not politically correct? Do you see them as just as movies of their time? Because I know as a movie analyst and film journalist, I still love these movies, but sometimes you think you can't talk about them anymore because of the changes in society. What's your opinion on that?
I think it's absolutely important to always contextualize anything that you discuss. So I think it's like I think there's some movies that really are just so sort of mean-spirited and
gross,
unevolved, and things that I think maybe we don't need to talk about them so much. But then I think there's movies like Fast Times where it's like it has some things in places where it is like, that's problematic, that's sexist, that's these other things, but it's also like there's also so much stuff in that movie that still feels revolutionary. I mean, her abortion situation, the way that she Amy Heckerling who filmed her losing her virginity scene, like that blew my mind. And then just all of these kinds of things that really show what it's like to be a young person stumbling their way through things. So I think it's important though when you see those kinds of movies and you say, okay, there's a lot, what have we learned? Like I love John Hughes movies, and that is like full of problematic, racist, sexist
just
stuff.
about all of them are, you're right.
And
but I love them too.
And so I think it's important to say, let's just keep talking about how we're evolving, like that we're learning from what learning to listen to other people's experiences more and respect them. And I think it's just as fair too if like friends say, I actually really don't feel comfortable talking about that movie, or I don't think it's a worthwhile movie to keep discussing because it does affect me too much. It does feel ruthless. But for me, I'm fascinated by the process of the way that the cultural conversation evolves. And so for me, it's really interesting to keep talking about that. I will say though, I think there is like sometimes too much of an argument about well, I don't think we need to separate, or I think we should separate the film from the filmmaker. And I don't think that's fair. I think there's enough nice people who are making movies who are not destructive,
Yeah,
that we can, that we can put a little more emphasis on the ones who are not
yeah.
destructive. But that
No,
doesn't mean we can throw everything away. We have to throw everything away. Again, it's like, let's talk about, the fact that, Roman Polanski was part of this very unhealthy,
sure.
sexual predator kind of culture, this like way that men were sort of conditioned to
Mm,
do whatever they wanted. But he also made these beautiful movies that are like Rosemary's Baby could not be more of a feminist film.
it's
That's fact,
amazing.
you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's always like, come at it from compassion and
Mm.
really thinking it through. Don't just dismiss either thing, like really think about both of them. That's where I come from. But I think we're all kind of like trying to be conscientious about that. And
Oh, for sure. And you mentioned John Hughes. I mean, his films are timeless, but then you can pick things out of it now that you think, oh, that's not, that's not right. But you just
yeah,
do it as
that was,
context.
but that's also the thing. It's like, I'm 45. Like, there was a lot of that stuff in the culture that you just, as you grew up, started
Yeah,
to realize how screwed up and hateful it was. But you
yeah,
didn't realize it at the time. And so it's like everybody was like that. And it's
yeah.
not everybody. There were plenty of genuinely evolved
Oh,
people already
of
that were,
course, and there still is, obviously. That.
yes.
Yeah.
But just like, it's realizing like, oh, we're all learning, and that's what we need to be doing, is
Mm.
just keep listening to each other,
As this is your first movie, and you're 45. Did you ever have any? Not that that matters, obviously. I'm just thinking, have you had any resistance being a female in the film industry? Because things have changed now, thankfully, but it never used to be like that. It was a lot more of a struggle. Did you have smooth sailing getting into the industry that you love and the door so much?
It's tricky to say. I never had I have been basically a unicorn in that I have not had a lot of like overt sort
Good.
of experiences like that, but I've been surrounded by it so much. Like, it's
Mm,
like everybody I know has had some sort of awful thing that's happened in terms of
mm,
sexual harassment, or like, but it's also just like these things that are more like little things, like somebody not considering reading the script or something, because it's like, well, you've only done, one short that
yes.
you're showing people, and yet there's plenty of other men who have made one short and suddenly they're directing a blockbuster. So there's those kinds of
Mm,
things that are a little like, maybe it's true, maybe it's not true kind of stuff that
mm,
I've encountered. But for the most part, I've been surrounded. I have an all female producing team.
yep.
We had a lot of women and people of color on the film. A lot of like, it felt very supportive in that way, where it was
Yeah.
like, but it's also just, it took me a long time to get to make this. I went to film school, I made shorts, I worked in reality TV, I stayed home with my daughter. So there's
Yes.
also like sexist systems in that. It's like, it was expected that somebody had to stay home with my kid because she has special needs, and the system's not set up to have enough support, so there's those sorts of things. But it wasn't like, come to my trailer, little girl. I didn't have any of that awful
That's
stuff.
really good to hear.
Yeah, I completely believe it, because again, I know so many, it's true for most women I know. It just hasn't been for me, thank God.
A reality TV background. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Am I
Yeah.
missing something? I don't do reality TV, although Sylvester Stallone is about to open the doors to reality TV. He's got
Oh,
his
I didn't know that.
yeah, his family are about to star in a reality TV show. I don't know if it's going
Oh,
to be anything like the Osbournes, but I'm intrigued. Am I
yeah.
missing something, Ali, with reality TV? Should I respect it more than I do?
Well, I will say this, I have, most of the shows that I worked on were really well put
Right.
together.
Okay, good.
They weren't my bag. Like, I worked on The Challenge for a long time,
Sure.
which is an
Yeah.
MTV athletic competition show. I barely know how to walk down the street. I don't relate to it, so it's like, I would always be like, wow, you're just really dangling from that rope. Like, I just couldn't relate. But I think, so I think a lot of it is well made. And I think there's definitely, I think it's just like, it has a bad rap because it kind of came from this place of trying to do things as cheaply and quickly as
Yeah.
possible.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think there's just like movies and regular, scripted TV, there's a lot of shit and there's a lot of greatness, and it just depends on where you're looking,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I had more respect for it while I was making it, because I could really see like how much care, you're
Oh, you
breaking the
would.
story, you're doing all of these kinds of things that you would do, but with finite footage. And so there's a lot of, but again, it depends on the show. I worked on somewhere it was like, oh, you're saying it's a reality show? Why am I seeing take 2, take 3?
Yeah. Right. That's
So
that's my problem with it.
yeah, but
The
I think it's
editing.
also just, you can get real arty and talk about like, well, if the camera is reflecting, is it really true? Like there's always that aspect to a certain degree, like, but it just depends on the show, and they're never going to tell you the truth about which ones are more authentic than others. But I will say from experience, the challenge is stunningly authentic. Like that's actually really, a lot of that is like, I'd say most of it is what actually was happening. And the worst it gets is they're like, we never got them saying something about it. And then
That's
they kind
good
of,
to hear.
so like that one's a pretty authentic show. But apart from, obviously, again, you're setting these people in this situation that they wouldn't normally be in. But that's anything with that's like watching sports. Like they wouldn't be there if they didn't get called in. But
That's true. Now to wrap it up, the apology, if you wanted to describe it in your own words as the director and you're selling it to someone who is on Shudder and going through all the thumbnails of different movies, why should they watch The Apology?
Well, The Apology is a Christmas psychological thriller, and it's basically, without giving just the plot of it, I would say that what makes The Apology special for me, and why I was continued to be compelled to make it throughout the process, is that, I love revenge movies. I love contained chamber piece, let's have it out movies. And I feel like so often revenge films we've already seen the kind of revenge film that you might imagine this film is.
True.
And so be prepared that this is a much more sort of grounded human emotional violence. There's plenty of real violence too, but that it isn't just spoiler alert. It's not just
right.
ripping out his guts in the attic or something. It's about them trying to get what they need from each other. And I thought that compelled me and my collaborators, I think, more. And again, as much as I love me a John Wick and
so do I.
A movie called Revenge, which I love so much, but it's I don't know if you've seen that one from a few years ago. I think Coralie Fargett. I'm a terrible fan that I'm saying her name wrong, I'm sure, but
you know what? I haven't. When I hear the movie Revenge as a title, I remember Kevin Costner
which is also a really interesting movie.
It's a great film, yeah.
Very problematic things as well in it, but it is really like, whoa, that's a harsh good movie. Yeah, I like that one too. But yeah, you should see this newer Revenge. It's really incredible. It really goes all the way out and has, let's just say, wait for the hallway scene. Oh boy, that sequence is really something. What is it with hallways? Why do we always have such great, incredible, strange sequences in hallways? I don't know.
Barbarian recently had a really good hallway scene, or a couple of them.
Oh my God, adored it. That was my favorite movie last year. I love Barbarian.
Yeah, it was in my top 10. All right, well, thank you very much. I mean, it was a small cast, and I usually ask directors, is there a cameo, a director's cameo in it? But I doubt that I saw you in it. Did you appear?
Yeah, no, I do the same cameo and throughout all my shorts and through this, and I don't know that I'll ever change, which is that I'm always in a photo somewhere. So I'm in a couple of photos. So if you look on I don't think you can really see it in the kitchen, but I'm in a Christmas card with my family on the fridge. And I'm also in a picture with my family and with my two best girlfriends who partly inspired Gretchen, because You're Right or Die. That's in Darlene's bedroom. So if you look very closely, that's where I am. But
you're making me now want to watch it again just for that. So
I always call those things like it's kind of like what you mentioned, like trying to look for the sort of hints or signals. I always call those rewatch rewards. Like get a few more little fun things that you wouldn't catch on the first time. So there you go.
Is there with your next movie or moving forward, is there and there's probably an endless answer here, but an actor that you really want to work with? Anyone in particular? One or two?
Yeah, There's so many, but I just saw
Of course.
Resurrection with Rebecca Hall, and I was like, oh,
Oh,
I continue to be obsessed with Rebecca Hall. I would love to work with her. Yeah,
yeah.
she's one of my
I
favorites.
Resurrection. I mean, I've always liked Rebecca Hall, and honestly, I posted about that movie when I watched it the end of last year. She basically thanked me online for it because I was just
Yeah,
thinking she should be in the conversation at awards season, but just
oh,
those movies are never ever realized, and
she
it's
never
sad.
is. And Night House too. Oh my God, and The
Night
Gift.
House was
Like,
another one. Yeah, exactly. Rebecca Hall's up there for me as well. So good
she's just been
choice. I hope it
bringing
happens.
it, bringing it. And I, that's the thing, as a director, you're always kind of keeping an eye out for who, like what I like to call plays in your sandbox.
Yeah.
So somebody that you feel like has that kind of is down to go to your dark places. And she is, man. She's full on.
Yes, yes. Well, congratulations on the apology. Keep
Thank
up the
you.
good work, Ali.
Thank you so much. It was nice to meet you and talk to you, and I appreciate your support of the movie. Thank you.
I'll just stop.